Well, hello, coaches. Good to see you. Some of you guys for the second time today. Thanks for being here. Glad to be back in the office this week. We have voluntary Ramsey team members here in the office, and we are we got some of the people back. We got them all back on Monday. So hope you guys are doing well with quarantine and everything going on in the world right now. Staying safe and staying sane, I guess, would be a good way to put it. So really excited to be here with you guys today. This is our second webinar for prospecting during quarantine. And the one we did last time, I think, was the highest rated, most best feedback I've ever gotten from a webinar since I've been doing this. And what I learned from that is you guys like to hear from your peers, and you hear me ramble enough, let's hear from some other folks. So happy to do that and step aside and lead the conversation and ask a lot of questions. And so what we're going to do today, you guys, we're getting everybody promoted here, and so I'm going to make all of you speakers co-hosts, and then you can start your videos up. Sorry, I can't do two things at once, so hold on, let me do this. We have some returning faces, and we have some new faces, which we're really excited about. So I'll tell you what, I reached out to a bunch of coaches to see who wanted to help, and everybody on here jumped at the chance and was very excited to participate. So we want to thank them. Nobody's here under threat of anything. They're here of their own volition and excited to participate. So, hey guys.
Hey, how are you?
Oh.
Good to see you.
Jeremy.
We got some powerhouse people on this call. This is really cool. All right. I just get excited about this stuff. All right. So here's what we're going to do today, you guys. We're going to do a quick round the horn, introduce yourself, name, how long you've been in business, how long you've been coaching, and how many clients are you actively working with on a monthly basis right now. And we have people from all over the country chiming in. So I'm going to go David, Matthew, Justin, Jay, Tracy, and Josh. You guys that's the order you're at in my screen. So David, why don't you kick it away?
Hey, y'all. I'm not from the South. I'm just channeling my inner Southern coach here. I have Dave Volzer. I've been coaching for a year and a half, and I have 37 current active clients.
How many did you have last time we were on this call?
36.
36. There you go. All right. Good stuff. Matthew.
Matthew Paul, been a coach for 4 years, started in 2016. Right now active close to 100 clients.
Good stuff. Did I see Justin Bennett get nervous? Is that what just happened?
Wow. I got work to do. Good job, Matthew and David. Justin Bennett, 10 years full-time, and I've got 70 to 80 clients a month. Pretty steady.
Cool. Good stuff. Jay, you are muted.
How's that? All right. Jay Thomas here. Thanks for having me on. I've been coaching about a little over 3 years. And I tend to have an average client count of around 10 on a given month.
Perfect.
Yep.
Tracy.
My name is Tracy Schunkweiler. I've been in business for 6 years. COVID has actually given me an opportunity to bring in some more clients. Right now I'm working with 23.
Awesome. And Josh?
Yeah, I've been doing this about 10 years, about 4 with Ramsey, and 20 to 25 clients part-time, about 15 hours a week.
Perfect. All right. So, all right, guys, we're just going to dive in. I sent you guys the outline, and we're going to maybe stick to it, maybe not. We're going to see what happens, and we'll ask a lot of questions. And like I said last time, if you guys didn't participate or don't remember, this is not going to be a super structured call. So we don't need to go through and I ask a question and everybody give their answer and we move on. We can conversation, interrupt each other, ask each other questions. Feel free to disagree with each other. That would be kind of cool. But
Jeremy, I'm a Susie Orman coach. I don't know if I ever told you that.
I didn't say disagree with me. Okay. That's not, I did not say that, Justin. I will mute you. I have the power. Okay. If I can mute Justin, I feel very powerful right now. So last time we talked about prospecting, we talked about getting the word out about your business. We talked about different places to do that. And so the first thing that I wanted to tackle with you guys is messaging. It's one of the most common questions I get from coaches. And when somebody is struggling to prospect, that's one of the things that I find that they don't have nailed down. You know, I talked to a coach yesterday and he's wrestling with this prospecting thing and trying to figure out, like, how do I message this? And I said, well, what do you do as a coach? And he said, well, you know, I help people with their budgets and I help them do this and that. And I said, man, it doesn't sound exciting. Like, why did you get into this? And you could see him come alive. He said, well, people have dreams and most people can't pursue them because their money's in the way. And I just want to help people get that barrier out of the way so they can go pursue what's really important to them. And it's like, that's what you do as a coach. That's what your mission is. That's the problem you solve. So we've got to, when we are talking to people, when we're prospecting, that's where we got to start. And so I'm curious, I'd like to know from you guys, when you're prospecting, whether it's, you know, when somebody asks you, what do you do? What is a financial coach? What is your answer? How do you explain that to people? So I'm going to back off and we'll see what happens.
I'll start there, Jeremy. And I'll tell you, my answer could be different depending on who I'm speaking to and the group that I'm with. If I'm talking to somebody from, you know, a Ramsey lead or something like that, it's going to be very different than my circle. So what I would mostly say, I think, is that I'm a relationship builder. And what I do is I help to build your relationship with money. And we look deep into, you know, what's created, where you are today and where you want to be. What are your self-limiting beliefs? Really just diving more into the belief system and not necessarily the numbers. And that's not exactly how I would say it, but that's what I believe I do.
How would you say it?
I would say that I'm a relationship builder. I repair your relationships with money.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you'll dive into an explanation of, like,
and then I would dive into an explanation.
What that looks like.
And
okay.
And that sentence alone will absolutely bring up a question, because people don't know what that means to have a relationship with money, mm-hmm. or what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So are you saying you approach it that way, and that they're usually like, well, what does that mean, or what does that look like? And then you're able to
absolutely
dialogue about that. Okay. Awesome.
Well, I usually, when somebody talk to you, again, as Tracy said, you know, if it is a Ramsey lead or if I'm in it's any way Ramsey related, I will use one, but if not, I will use a different one. But usually I ask a question, when was the last time you had a little bit of financial and marital peace in life? And most of them says for a long time. And I said, no, what, hey, I can show you how to attain marital peace and financial peace. And I may be able to show you that. Are you interested? And I've never seen somebody says that, no, I don't like to have peace in life.
So you connect the marital peace and financial peace.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that they are very interconnected. Now, again, that is if I'm assuming that it is a married couple, right? If you're single, then I will ask you, what do you like financial peace together with some accountability so that you can attain your goals?
It's similar to Matthew. I take a similar approach. I say, if somebody asks you, and this is kind of funny, when somebody first meets you and say, oh, hey, what do you do? As if that's the most important thing in your life. And that's just silly anyway. But I just say, well, I'm a guide. And just keep it super simple, because you want to prompt the next question. That starts a great conversation. You say, oh, well, I help couples, Christians, achieve their purpose in life, to walk out their faith and their finances. And so it's definitely connecting a deep concept with something very practical, and just gets a lot of wheels turning, and it gets people to ask questions. And so then I go into a deeper conversation, trying to connect and ask questions about then, so how are you feeling emotionally right now in your situation?
Yeah, those are good. Let me tell you what I used to say that never worked. I used to go like, hey, I'm a financial coach and I want to show you how to cut up credit cards and use this thing called envelopes. And I'm going to help you sell your car and get a part-time job. You're going to love it. And you know what? That didn't work real well. But then I learned from Don Miller better messaging. And so now in those conversations, I'll say something like this. You know how most Americans work really hard, make decent money, and they have nothing to show for it and they're stressed? And you can tell they're leaning in like, tell me more of this. They won't say it, but it sounds like me. I go, I'm a money finder. I help people find money in their budgets. And on average, I find $500 to $1,000 a month in their budget so they can meet their financial goals and get their life back.
Good. I guess I'll jump in. So I tend to, and I've kind of, like others, I'm sure, have kind of changed my approach over time. And the more practice I get, the more I tend to tweak it. But I tend to start by just saying, hey, I'm a financial coach, and see what their reaction is to that. 80% of the folks are going to have a kind of a, oh, okay. All right. Tell me a little bit more. But then I kind of talk about the fact that I'm as a guide, I help them to basically become stronger and more secure financially. And they say, oh, okay. Well, yeah, how do you do that? And so then it becomes a conversation. Well, okay. I basically will help you figure out how to live on a budget. How do you start paying off debt if that's your situation? And basically figuring out where you want to go financially, where you are now, where you want to go. And I'll work with you one-on-one to make sure you have a plan to get there.
So how do you guys take this conversation? How do you turn that into a consultation, let's say, or to an exchange of information? Like when you're, let's say you're talking to somebody and you're having these conversations, when they express some level of interest or you see that it's starting to go somewhere, what do you do next? Do you dive in and start asking questions about like where they want to go, or do you go right to, hey, let's exchange information, or do you say, here's my, like, where do you take it next? And how do you start to move towards a consultation, which is ultimately where you can really dive in and start to help them?
I usually share a little bit of my story, suggesting that, this is what I came out of. And if I can come out of this, chances are you can. Are you interested in seeing how to do it? And most of the people will say yes. And so my aim at that moment is to get a Zoom call or in-house call, right, for 30 minutes. And when I make it, I will not explain exactly what I'm going to do, but I will give this pointers that, hey, I'm somebody who came out of debt to debt-free life, and I'm having peace right now, and I can show you how. Are you interested? And most of the time they will say yes. And then I schedule the Zoom call, the consultation, and from there I'll take it from there.
So you kind of paint a picture and then say, are you interested in seeing what that would look like, basically?
Yep. Because if they cannot see, most of the time they cannot see what they are at this point. And so I usually talk about, I don't know whether I can fix your problem, but I know I fix mine. If yours is mine like that, chances are you may be able to fix yourself too, and I can show you how.
So you're kind of piquing their curiosity, not for over-promising, saying I'm going to change your life, because that feels like you don't even know my situation. How can you do that? So you draw them in with, hey, I was able to do this. Let me show you what that would look like.
Absolutely.
I like it.
I completely agree with Matthew. I think that I absolutely share my experience, strength, and hope. And my experience financially is a pretty deep hole, to a point where I was even homeless at one point. So sharing that story can really make people want to hear more. And the hope is me where I am now, right? That I have a family, I have a house, and not getting into that I'm on baby step 7, that kind of thing. But that I absolutely have a sense of freedom around my finances, and that I've been able to heal some of those self-limiting beliefs, and that if I can do it, you can do it too. There's always another way. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and I can help you in that process.
So I'd say, oh, go ahead, Dave.
All right. Yeah, I think the transitional question, just something very simple, is do you want help with that? That is one of the most effective transitional statements. But I think what gives the power behind that is how effective were you in connecting with them initially? So when you're in conversation, you're connecting with them emotionally. You're really understanding their situation to such a degree that you've validated their feelings and their emotions so that they start to trust you. And part of that is sharing your story as well. But you need to make a shift. There has to be a shift, a transition from just mutually sharing the struggles that you have to then saying, okay, so what next? Because we can all share and have these deeper conversations, but to go from prospect to now potential client and getting to that consultation, you have to kind of take the reins as a coach and make that transition and say, okay, so do you want help with that? That's what I do. I help you actually get from where you are now to where you want to be.
Does anybody not like to share their story at the beginning or at that point?
I would rather share a client story or something similar to them if I can pull a few tidbits out of them. Something a little closer to home than just whatever my story might be.
So Joshua, again, in the spirit of disagreement, right? I'm obviously
stir the pot here a little bit.
we are not trying. At least I'm not trying to discredit any of the client story. What I'm trying to say at that moment is that, there is some hope in this whole process because it worked for at least me and it worked for several other people. So chances are it will work for you. Why don't you give a shot? Because at that moment, I'm a total stranger, especially with somebody like me with a thick accent and stuff like that, they are like completely scared to share something to me. And so at that moment, the only option is to go and ease the conversation by sharing who you are.
Yeah, I think it just depends on, I say yes to both. It just really depends. I think, was it Jay or someone said, it just depends on who I'm in front of. And I mean, if my story is going to connect with the person, I'll share mine, but absolutely, I have no problem. If it's, a single mom, I've never been a single mom. That'd be weird. And so I'm going to use a single mom story in that. But I want to hit something I'm noticing in the chat. Sonia mentioned about, does anyone else have trouble getting the prospects to follow up? Absolutely. Welcome to coaching. As I'm coaching a lot of coaches now, the one thing I'm hearing is, if I can be a little bold, well, I'm call, email, and text. It's not working. Well, you do it more than once. All these referral partners I've built over the years, it took 5 years of follow-up. 5 years. It didn't happen overnight, folks. Some of these leads took years of follow-up, months of follow-up, weeks of follow-up. They're nervous. They're scared. And when I first started, there was one coach. Now there's 3 coaches calling. And they're wondering, should I put my name in there? So you just gotta keep calling, keep emailing. And I don't call 37 times a day. I'm not a broke telemarketer. But guys, everyone's looking for the perfect script, the perfect text. And yes, work on the messaging. Please work on the message. We all got to. But part of sales is how much are you going to follow up with them? I don't know if it's true, Jeremy. Maybe you could shed light on this, but I thought I heard at one point, if you do sales at Ramsey Solutions, you got to make at least 15 contacts before you can, not contact it anymore. I don't know if it's true or not. I heard it somewhere years ago, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
But anyway, and so just got to be out there, and so as all these coaches are saying great things, and I have used all of them, but persistent follow-up is the name of the game to get a prospect to eventually give you a chance.
You brought up a good point. They just put their information in. They just see, oh, these 3 coaches are going to call me. And if you've ever jumped off the high dive, in PE, the moment your feet leave the platform, you have this, oh crap moment. Like, what the heck did I just do?
Mhm.
And as soon as they hit submit and they get these 3 people, oh my goodness, this is real. And I've got to talk about it. I've got to tell these 3 strangers 3 separate times that I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm freaking out, and my marriage is hanging on by a thread, and I'm scared and I can't sleep at night. I'm just going to tell these 3 people that I don't know all of that. My spouse may not even know this stuff. My best friends don't know this stuff, but I'm going to tell you. Like, so we got to respect that there's a struggle there and have compassion on that and let that drive your persistence. Because like you said, it's not, well, I called them 6 times. I reached out 6 times and they didn't, so I'm just going to, well, I guess they're not interested. Well, maybe, but maybe they're struggling,
And I'll even share. Oh, go ahead. Someone else.
No, go ahead, Justin.
I was just going to say, one of the things too, when I get a brand new Dave Ramsey lead and I actually get that initial call and I actually get them on the phone, what I do after I introduce myself, my name's Justin, I'm a financial coach with Dave, or a Dave Ramsey coach. Why did you reach out today? And I let them tell me their spiel. Whatever their spiel is, I guess I found out there's a term called mirroring. Didn't even know there was such a term as mirroring. I just repeat back a summary of what it is. And after that, I just go, you know what? You've reached out to the right place as a way to defuse, to calm them down that you're in the right place. And then I just said the next step is, and then I walk them through how to schedule a consultation. I don't spend but more 5-7 minutes on the phone. And to show you the power of follow-up, and I'm not trying to brag on me, I'm sharing this because I've heard other coaches say the same. Back now, the last, been 2 or 3 years now, we've been in multiple coaches in multiple zip codes. And I'll never forget the first time that happened. I actually had several, it was in December, the first week I had 3 leads. I called almost every day, crickets. And the week after Christmas, one of them reached out to me and said, Justin, you're the only one that followed up with me. If I go with anyone, it's going to be with you. And I've heard other coaches who follow up like that say the reason why I chose you over the other coaches in the list is you cared enough to keep calling.
I will do that intentionally. I'll not call back and see who follows up. Does anybody else do that? Where you weed people out by seeing who's not persistent when you're on the receiving end of those calls?
I don't know that part, Jeremy. But I
can work for it.
I do want to add a piece there. And Jeremy, you and I have talked about this before, that when people reach out for help, and I come from a 12-step world, and what we know is that when somebody surrenders, you have 20 minutes to get to them. And I truly believe that for what we do. When somebody goes, when they're desperate and they reach out for help in that moment, you have a very short window to contact them and get them in that moment where they've surrendered to the fact that they are going to ask for help. It takes an incredible amount of courage. So with that being said, for me, I've said on many a Sundays that tomorrow I'm not going to eat pizza. Jeremy, have you ever been there before? Just wondering. So, but that's my surrender Monday, right? I'm not going to do it. And then I think I'm not going to do it. And then Monday pizza comes along and I'm not going to have another conversation with you. And then I'm going to try again. I'm going to try to surrender again. It's a process. It's not usually just a one and done for many people. It's a long time before they get to us. It's not like, you know what, I'm feeling some stress and some money, I'm going to reach out and get help. That's not the norm, I don't think. I think people go through an incredible process before they're able to pick up the phone or open the computer and go, there's got to be other help out there. There's got to be another way that I'm not seeing, that I don't know, and I'm willing to get naked for somebody else, basically, and say, you know, this is what I've done. This is the mess that I've created. This is where my family is. This is the debt that I'm in. I can't retire. I can't send my kids to school, whatever it is. And I'm just filled with, you know, there's shame, and there's so many things attached to this. And there's so much, you know, there's just so much attached that's way below the numbers, or way above the numbers, however you want to look at it, that need to be looked at. And I mean, that's why people aren't answering the first call. I mean, if you're not getting them right away, that's what I truly believe. I just called somebody that I got in a lead from 2016. Do you know what she said to me? You are so sweet. She wanted to call with me. Like, she could not believe that I still had her name from 4 years ago. I don't even know how I had her name, but I did, you know, and I thought she'd be an easy call to make right now. And, you know, and I still had notes on her, and it was a great conversation, and who knows what it's going to turn into, but her situation hadn't changed. right? Because she decided not to move forward. She didn't have the ability in that moment, so we'll see what happens.
I want to go back to something you said, Tracy. You said when they surrender. Can you clarify what you meant by that? I want to make sure that part sticks.
God's will, not mine, is probably the easiest way for me to say it with this group. It's to turn it over, to say that I'm not in control anymore, to say that I'm at my bottom, I've hit bottom, that there's another way, that it's not about me anymore, that I can't control it anymore.
That moment where they say, I've got to do something different, that I've had it moment, I've got to ask for help, I've got to reach out, basically.
Absolutely.
Be willing to expose myself.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure. Matthew, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, I wanted to echo with Tracy. We signed up another client this month in April, in the middle of COVID. And the first time they came through us is in 2017, January. And after that, in last 3.5 years, they went to a hurricane, went through a complete demolition of the house, had serious sickness in their house. When we kept in touch, and they became a client this month.
Awesome.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. Client prospect from 2017. Guess when they signed up? April 2020.
Yep.
Guess how many follow-ups that was? 29. So it's not like I'm calling them every day. But to build off what Justin and Tracy said, if you're keeping it about the client and you imagine that you're in their shoes, or try and put yourself in their shoes, when you reach out to them, let's say they don't answer the phone, you're probably disappointed, but you got to eat that. Leave a brief message. Don't kill them with a 3-minute message. They're overwhelmed. They will not call you back. They will call me back with a 15-second or less message, because even I look at a voicemail after it comes in, and I'm using voice to text, but I look at it and I go, 3 minutes, I don't have time for that. But like 10 seconds, 15, okay. My callbacks way, way better, since my messages got shorter, more concise, very them focused.
That's really good, Josh. And to build on that, talking about messaging, I think it was Sonia, you asked, with all the follow-ups, if it's month after month, what do you say? What do you have to say after that long period of time? And my rule of thumb when I'm following up is I'm never using messaging that says, hey, just call in the follow-up, Dave Ramsey, financial coach. Like, think about when you call them or you email them, every point of contact, you're asking something of them. You're asking for their time, and that's valuable. As a coach, your time is valuable. So if you're asking that of them, of their time, make it clear, make it concise, and provide value. You want to be providing something of value that's worth their time. And so whether that's a specific piece of information related to what you know about their situation, or maybe it's just something that's going on in the world, and you said, hey, I want to check in to see how you're doing because we're in crazy times. So show that you care, provide some real value. And secondly, make it a two-way conversation. You want there to be a dialogue. So invite them into a dialogue, ask a question, and give them a reason to call you back. So you're not just calling to say, hey, just following up, I hope you're doing well. No, ask a question so that they feel like, oh, maybe I should answer that. Maybe I should call them back.
It's a really good segue to the next thing that we wanted to talk about is how are you incorporating COVID, shutdown, quarantine into these prospecting initial conversations?
This is the best time, Jeremy. For me, in my 6 years, there's never been a better time. I've never been more comfortable in the process because nobody's alone anymore. It's easy to talk about, how have you been financially affected, or your family, or even medically affected, anything, what's this done to your job, or how does it look like you're, in the future, and how's your family holding up? It's a pretty easy conversation right now because everybody's at some level of stress and some level of fear, no matter where they are. My husband goes out to work every single day, but he's more stressed now than he ever has, just stepping out the door and trying to keep his, the workers safe. So it just, to me, just seems like a very easy conversation. And then part of that is, and I just talked to you about this, Jeremy, that I'll ask them, are they prepared? Like if they end up in the hospital, do they have their, their life in order? Are their finances in order? Who's going to take care of them if something happens? What is, the business of dying is big. The business of dying will take away anybody's opportunity to truly grieve. What have you done to prepare for this? So, the conversations are just so easy for me right now in that way. And people want to talk about it. And most people will say, I don't have my life in order. I don't have my, my power of attorney. I don't have that. I don't have a will. Like what will happen to my kids? Mm-hmm. Well, how will people get to my money? So, and I like going to, if you don't take care of it, there's going to be a GoFundMe for you, and nobody wants to GoFundMe for them.
Can you briefly share about just Sarah and how you're using that? I think all the coaches would benefit from another reminder about that.
So I'm coaching a woman who is in her early 30s who suddenly lost her husband in November. She has three children, young children. They were on their baby steps, and they were definitely committed to the process. And they started off with just having, they were paying off his debts first, his student loans and the things that he had. His debt. Anyway, he dies suddenly, and I just cried telling his story. It's Sarah doesn't even have a way to get into any of her husband's accounts. They don't have a will, and actually, what happened was they had life insurance papers. They had not signed them. They were sitting on the kitchen table when he died.
Oh.
So there was no money that was coming in. His business, the password to get into some of his accounts was his iris. It's actually his eye. So she has, since November, has not been able to get into any of the accounts, and they don't have anything in order. So she was left in just pure desperation, just really just at her bottom, grief-wise, and I'll tell you, she's just been such an incredible gift to me in my life and in my my coaching, in that I'm not getting off the phone with people until they commit to me that they're going to take care of certain things that have to do with that end of life. The business of dying, which we call our legacy journey, right? I call it the business of dying because people want to know what does that mean. It's a really, really sad story. And I will tell you, I've been on the phone with her where she just sobs. We don't talk about money every time. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting through a 30-minute conversation of just, I'm here for you. We'll figure this out. It's okay. But it's not okay. It really is not okay. So it's a sad story, and it's a good reason to really push your clients to do the things, and your family members and anybody you come in contact with. That's the conversation right now. Is your life in order? What have you done or what have you not done? Who's going to clean up your mess? Right? Because there will be a mess for most, I think.
So I'm taking it more lightly than that. I haven't had a client like that in a little while. And I just empathize with people. I say, are you working at home, or grocery shopping sure is way different than it used to be, whatever. The conversation I enter into is a lot more shallow than that, but just emphasizing with the uncertainty of the times. And I think everyone identifies with that, particularly if we're talking to Ramsey leads or whatever. They really identify with that, and that's like an okay permission to not be in control, that, hey, lots of other people are feeling this way. So it's an easy bridge to a deeper conversation. Now, what do we do about it? And one of the things I like to tell people is, you got to do something, right? The most expensive choice you can make here is to do nothing about your current situation. It might not cost in terms of paying a coach fee, but it's going to cost you for the rest of your life. And not in a threatening way. I don't put it that concisely maybe, but the most expensive choice they can make is to do nothing. And they get it.
And devastating choice, Joshua, sure. Right? I mean, it's devastating to the families when people don't take care of their financial wellness, their business.
So Jeremy, going back to the question that you asked, how do you deal with people during this COVID time? And I usually say that, you know what, everybody is struggling right now, and this COVID will go away and the life will be back. May not be to the same normal, but to a new normal. And a lot of people will rise above the tide. Do you want to rise above the tide with others, or you want to stay in the place where it was before COVID? And most of the time they will say, we wanted to get better. And that's where the discussion starts. I completely agree with Tracy that, there has never been a good time than what we are. When I say good time, I feel bad for those people who are losing lives and relatives getting lost and all those stuff. But all those aside, when it comes to these discussions, there is no better time right now than any other time in my past 4 years being a coach.
And you guys are hearing different perspectives, and some of you guys are going to resonate with one thing and some of you guys are going to resonate with others, but what they're doing, no matter whether we take a really, maybe a more intense approach or a bit more of a, like, hey, shopping's kind of different right now. We're looking to make an initial connection. We're looking to find some common ground. And that's the really important thing, that when you first talk to somebody, we've got to connect. You've got to look for a way to connect with them quickly. And then, the way you approach the business and your heart for why you do this and just your personality and all these things are going to factor in. So what I'm hoping you guys see, and why I wanted to call out, like, let's disagree a little bit, not to figure out who's right. Because it's not about, well, this is right and this is not right. It's about, there's more than one way to do this thing. And so people want to know, well, what's the one thing that I can say? What's the script? Just give me the words. It's like, well, there's no words. There's not only one set of words that you have to say. If you say this one thing, then you're good. And if you don't, well, then you're screwed. And we're not going to tell you what it is. We're going to make you figure it out. Like, no, if that existed, we would tell you, just say this and you're good, but it doesn't exist. And so your personality is going to resonate with different coaches here. And I just want to encourage you guys to try different things, because all of these coaches here have developed their own style. They've developed their own approach, and it works for them. So,
and I think it's great too, hearing Tracy's very, wow. I mean, that doesn't get your attention. And I think it's good hearing the Josh, because it's all situational. I mean, you can tell when you're meeting with someone, if you got a very intense story, they're going to curl up in the fetal position. At the same time, some people need that. And so to have a bag of tricks or a bag of stories that you can use at any time, depending on the situation, is helpful. One of the things I've used, and it's not perfect, but one thing I add in there is when I'm meeting with clients or potential clients rather, that, it was interesting when COVID started, the number of past clients that came to me and said, I am really glad we got our financial house in order, or at least started. I mean, I've even had some that are in the process and then it hit. Oh my goodness, if that would happen just 3 months ago. Yeah. And then I'll follow that up with, you know what, in 10 years, I don't know what, it may not be a virus, but something probably in the next decade is going to hit again. Let's get you set up so when the next decade hits, you're ready.
So all of you guys nod at the same time. That was funny.
Jeremy, I want to say that I absolutely come from a very bold, I'm right outside of Philly. I like Philly. I like New York. I don't, for me, talking to people that are a little further south, I have to slow down my talking just because I speak quickly. I don't feel like I can be quite as bold. I definitely have a very specific clientele that likes working with me and that I like working with. So I know that I can be strong that way. One of the questions here is where are some of these conversations happening? And I made 4 phone calls last week that scared me to death because all 4 said yes to me. And I'm going to tell you, one of them was, I was speaking to an Ask a Coach lead, and I said, can I have the information from your coordinator? I want to see if I can do a class with your class at Q&A. He said yes. I reached out to the guy who did my roof, and I said, I know that you guys aren't working right now. Would it be good for you and your team and your family if we did a Controlling Your Controllables webinar? He was all in. I'm doing that next week. I contacted a therapist that I know who runs groups for women, and I asked her if we could do some type of therapeutic group together. And this is what her exact response was: Tracy, my dog just passed away. As soon as I am done grieving, we are absolutely doing this. I want you on my team. And I was scared because I was like, uh-oh, because that was my third yes. And then I'm supposed to do a Christian radio show in July. And I contacted them and I said, with everything that's going on in the world right now, would it make sense if we moved up this interview? And she said, I have an interview in the first week of May. So, just getting out there, just asking anybody, right? My roofer wants to do a webinar with me. So, think about that. People are not working and they want to add value to their employees. And it's a great way to do it.
But Tracy, you didn't call and ask, how can I get this from you? You called those people and said, hey, how can I serve you?
That was my exact words. How can I add value to your company? They were my words.
Mm-hmm. Who doesn't want to care about what's in it for them? That's what's important to them.
And I was scared, Jeremy. And then I was really scared when the first person said yes and the second person yes, because I have not created this class yet. So I got to really step into this, but that's what happened.
Jump and build your wings on the way down, huh?
Yep.
Seriously, I love
awesome.
that. I had a similar experience this past week. I nearly doubled the number of referral partners I got this week just by making the phone calls. And gosh, the hardest part is just making the call. And you have to call as soon as you get the idea. Make the call before you think about it too much and let the fear stop you. Just call, and then when you get freaked out because they said yes, call again, make another call, and then just don't stop. And just you put out so many feelers and expect the yes, and expect a good conversation, expect value, and be focused on what they want, what they're looking for. How do you support them? And you're going to get an overwhelming positive response, and just keep reaching out. And what's great is I think for most of us entrepreneurs, we're out there, and once you get the yes, we don't have a problem going out and getting it done. We provide the value, we build the program, we do the messaging, we put the presentation together, whatever it is you got to do, you'll get it done. But if you don't have the opportunity in front of you, there's not a lot of motivation to just sit and work on putting together workshops and presentations. You got to make the call first.
You guys are really good at transitioning to the next thing that's on our stuff, on our list here. So, all right. So I want to share with you guys, I think I talked about this already, about 10 days into working from home. My wife would say that I was grumpy. And I realized that I sit Lisa, Les, and Tim, or they're less than 6 feet away normally. And in the first 10 days of working from home, I didn't speak to them once on a one-on-one basis, because I'm talking to coaches, I'm doing interviews, I just kind of got in my groove and was in my own little bubble. And we talked to you guys about not being isolated, and it smacked me across the face how isolated I was. And my wife was the one who pointed it out, like, you need to chill out. You're grumpy. And she called me out, and I was like, oh my goodness, I realized what had happened. And so it's really easy for me to envision. I'm a newer coach. I don't have a ton of people on my list. I'm in my little office. I'm at the desk in my bedroom. I'm in the basement, and I'm sitting here. And man, it's really easy to be motivated and connected when you work at Ramsey Solutions. But I'm at my home. It's my phone, my piece of paper, and my computer, and I'm in my bubble. And so let's talk about. We've heard two coaches say, I was scared to make the phone call, because that's the case for a lot of people. So let's talk about that moment of fear when you have the phone and you could pick it up and you're all by yourself. Nobody's watching. There's nobody to hold you accountable. What do you do? How do you get yourself to do the thing that you know you're supposed to do, but it's just really freaking hard to do in that moment?
Well, I will go. I do not have a problem with picking up the phone. Because I know that that's the only way you can move forward. So I have a problem. It's like, who can I call next? Because I don't want I don't want myself to be put like, what, not having anybody else to call, in the sense, who are my next best people that I can call with. So I'll tell you what I did in the last 2 weeks. Maybe that will help other people. I attended close to 16 networking meetings in the last 3 weeks. And now it's pretty good because you don't have to drive anywhere. Everything is through Zoom. And so you are going from one to another. And guess what? I shared who I am and what I can get. And somebody heard that and they thought, hey, my sister is struggling. And so they sent that person to us and we signed up as a client. So it's not about taking the phone call alone. It is trying to attend as many networking meetings as possible and not trying to put a feeler of who you are in front of other people.
I'll say that, one of the worst parts for me about this job was picking up the phone initially. Just a tough thing to do. I never really was attracted to getting on the phone and asking for anything. But so my wife is a therapist and I'm a financial coach. And so we're in business together. And she's come up with a phrase that she calls 6 seconds of courage. And basically what she teaches people to do is, no matter how hard it might seem to be, if you can just come up with enough courage to act for 6 seconds, that it will have a huge impact, not only at that time, but in the next time that you get ready to do it. So I have found that I pick up the phone the first time, it's like, I'm not gonna get through this. The next time it's a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And I think we all know that to be the case with almost anything, right? That was starting for the first time. If you do it once, it gets a little bit easier, a little bit easier, a little bit easier. So now I really don't even think about it when I pick up the phone. I just consider it now a part of the process and a very necessary part. So that's kind of how I approach it.
That's interesting. So I was just thinking about this. We can create really good or really bad habits. And so if we're constantly backing down from that fear every single time it rears its ugly head, we're actually training our brains to back down from the challenge and to back away from the fear and to say, you know what, I'll do it later. And I'll do it later can become a habit.
Yeah.
That's a dangerous habit, but we can fall into that. And when our clients say, well, I'm afraid to do the budget, we're real quick to jump in and say, oh, but you can do it. And let's, we can, when it's, and I know this for me, when it's you guys, me talking about this for you guys, oh, it's so easy. And for my own things, Tracy, we've talked about this quite a bit, where it's not the pizza, it's the burrito, but it's the same thing. I'm not going to do that anymore. Well, I could not eat it tomorrow though. And we can create negative habits by reinforcing them over and over again.
Tomorrow never comes. There's never, tomorrow isn't a reality because there's always I can do it tomorrow. And that's the same thing with what I was referring to, like to that Surrender Monday. I will tell you, there's times when I am not spiritually connected in the way that I would be spiritually connected, that making calls is very difficult. When I am centered and grounded, I can straighten up my crown and make as many calls as necessary, and every one of them can be a no, and I can walk away and it'll be fine. Sometimes I can make that call and the first one will be a no, and I'm just devastated, and that's the end of the evening. But it's okay, it's just a matter of staying in the game and keep moving forward and making those calls and taking that next step. But it's a practice, right? Yeah. It's always going to be a practice. There's always going to be some days that are harder than others, depending on what's going on for me in my life and where I am in that process, or even just a sense of desperation, maybe, that I want the next client. And I have to remember that it's not about me, and it's not about the yes or the no. It's just about being in that practice. Somebody on the line talking about here about the selfishness, and I agree with that. I have a gift. I have a superpower that I need to share, and I desperately want to share it sometimes. And I have to remember that it's not about me, and just keep moving forward. When I went through Financial Coach Master Training, they talked about. And maybe they still do that, and I think that's what I heard from, the first no gets you closer to a yes. My first no, I was so excited because I knew that meant I was going to get a yes. Like a little kid, just like, if I get a no, then I'm just that much closer.
Og Mandino wrote The Greatest Salesman in the World, and he said, you talked about tomorrow never comes. He said, tomorrow is a day reserved for the labor of the lazy. And it's so true. Tomorrow, it's not coming.
Hey, guess what? So I'm a high C, so I want to know everything before I do it. and I'm a high S, so I want to not bother people, not interrupt people. So guess when I call people? At the beginning of my day. So my day doesn't get much further than that. And to what Tracy was speaking about, if your head's not in the right place, you're not going to be a very effective caller. So when I put out the file in the file section of the group, number one thing you can do to prospect, figure out what you're grateful for at first. Center yourself first. And then you can actually pour into other people. You can provide hope. But if you're hopeless yourself, or you're spent after the end of a long day or whatever, you're probably not going to come across as nicely as if you do it in the meat of your day, in the best part of your day. So, and then there's a momentum thing, right? When you get a yes or two, Justin, all the flipping time. Can't beat him to it. Jeremy, all the flipping time. They're always fighting. Use the momentum. Go get client number 2, whatever it is. Because guess what? You talk different. You speak differently when you're not desperate, when you feel like, yeah, you're going to get that yes. And so you got to have that in your headspace where you're not just admitting defeat, believing defeat before it happens, that maybe they won't commit, or maybe they will say no, or I've got to think about it, or whatever they might say. And also, be sure you make the ask, right? So we can have all the great zingers, the great one-liners, whatever. But if you don't set up your ask, if you don't show the value and then actually make the ask, you're not getting a client. 9 out of 10 times, you're not getting a client. You might get lucky. But I put what I don't love doing at the beginning in a block in my schedule so that I actually do it.
Joshua,
Eat the
did you
frog.
read the book Eat That Frog? Oh, did somebody else just say that?
Yeah.
Did you read that book, Joshua?
I haven't read that book, but there's a lot of great thoughts from a lot of great authors.
Okay.
Yeah, the basic idea there is if you've got to eat a frog today, just do it first and get it out of the way, because that's the worst thing you're going to have to do that day. So
I have eaten frog legs, and that taste does stay around a little while. So I might contend with the author slightly, but I follow.
I want to point out something quick from the chat. Leslie, it's a little farther up in the chat now. Leslie said, how do you deal with your own insecurities? I think deep down, I'm actually scared to get clients because I feel I don't have enough value to provide. Just speaking to that, and maybe this is just me, I'm a 99I, so I am like a super people person. And literally, I'll finish a client session. If I don't have another one back to back, I'm hitting send on that email, the follow-up's done. And that transitional moment, I ask myself, why am I not talking to somebody? Why am I not on the phone engaging in another conversation? Like, I'm constantly in conversation, whether it's talking to somebody in an email, on a chat, or on the phone. I'm texting. After 1 session, 2 sessions goes by, I've got 3 new messages or voicemails on my phone. And like it's all a conversation. It's relating to people, and maybe that's me because I'm such a high I. But I do feel that all the time. I feel, do I have enough value to provide? I feel it all the time, but it's a lie. It's a lie. And that prevents me from getting on to the next conversation. And part of being an I, you're just constantly firing. And so if I just make the call, it's ringing. And then I start thinking about, okay, what am I going to say? But I made the call. And so I expect them to pick up. I'm smiling. I'm racking my brain thinking about what I'm going to say, but that's natural to me in conversation. The hardest part is making the call. And then once I start talking, all of a sudden that lie is gone. It's that I do have value. Just starting to hear that person's situation, that story, or talking about what it is that I'm doing, because that the passion rises up. And now you're in the middle of conversation and you're connecting, and then you realize at the end of the call, wow, I got a lot of value. There's a lot here. I'm so glad I'm doing this.
you just said something that was really, really important. Don't miss it, coaches. He said smile. The way that you carry yourself, your physical body when you're on the phone will translate over. And so if your posture is hunched over, you're on your desk, you're like this, people can tell. So Motion creates emotion. Stand up, walk around, smile when you dial. Those things will make a huge difference. You will sound confident. You'll come across like you know what the heck you're talking about. Even if you feel like you're faking it a little bit, that's okay. We've all been there. You're not, but we get it. And so be intentional about how you make your phone calls. We've got a few minutes left. So that was my best tip for making phone calls. So let's do this. Let's go around the horn. And why don't you guys give your best tip for tackling your phone time like a pro coach?
I put a
You guys
coffee
didn't
in
have
my
time to
I
think.
put a coffee in my hand and pretend like I'm talking to somebody that I'm already in relationship with. It helps me to relax. It helps me to have those conversations. As far as making the calls, you know, I struggle with it too. It's easy to say it right here that, you know, I do this, this, and this, but there's struggles all day long with this process for me. So, but just like Joshua was talking about, it's like eating that frog. I got to try to do the thing that is the hardest thing for me to do first, which may be that day. It depends on what it is that they pick up the phone and start making those warm calls.
That's awesome. I like it.
I would say make sure you get yourself in an environment that you feel comfortable in. And for me, you know, I usually will do it at my desk at the office, and I'll put on my headphones like a lot of you guys have yours on now, and I just make sure that, you know, I've got my pen and paper and I feel, you know, ready and confident. The other thing, though, I would say is to make sure you got your questions ready. Jeremy, you've been telling us for quite a while that clients are made in conversation. That's absolutely true. So don't worry so much about what you're going to say. Have your questions ready and make sure that they're good, engaging questions. And that's more than half of the issue. If you can just get your clients talking and you're good at asking questions and you're good at listening and following up on those questions, you're going to have a great time on the phone, and it's going to be a conversation. Right?
Wow. Good stuff.
So one of the things, and actually I saw some in the chat there, that I've done that was really helpful is this lovely thing called time blocking. And a great book I'd recommend reading is called The One Thing by Gary Keller, who's the co-founder of Keller Williams. It starts with a Chinese proverb: if you try to chase two rabbits at the same time, you catch neither. And really time block, and I don't remember if he said it or where I heard it, but when you time block your day to make those prospecting calls, you need to do that every day and treat it like a paying client. So show up as if it was a paying client, because it is a paying client and it's getting you more paying clients. And I know some people who are coaches, you're either, you know, part-time mom or your full-time work or parents or whatever, and it makes it a little bit more challenging. But time blocking, and I would even encourage mix up the time blocking. I was just having this conversation the other day with someone where, you know, mornings are great, but maybe once a week or twice a month somewhere, put one from 6 to 7. I'm going to time block then, or 5 to 6, and mix up the days and times of when you're going to time block, but block it like it's and keep it like it's a client, and don't ever replace it.
So Justin, I have a different block. It's not the time block. It is called the number block. So I am determined to make 35 calls a day. I started from when I was working full time, not on the coaching business, but I was doing it part time. And so it started with 30, and when I became full time, it made 35. So every day I make 35 phone calls to people either on the prospecting list or networking or somebody.
That's why you have 100 clients.
Have you had days where you made 35 calls and got nothing?
Absolutely.
Once? It happened once, or it's happened many times?
Almost, I don't know, so many days.
Okay.
There was one guy, he was on the speed dial. I was so determined to call him that I was put him on a speed dial. I called him like 20 times and finally I got him.
You will answer the phone.
And
All
I love
right.
it.
That's awesome. So set a time. That's a good point too, because I don't know about you guys. I've sat at my desk saying I'm gonna make calls for an hour, and it takes me an hour to make 3 calls. I've done that.
So I just want to share real quick a quick experience. I had a time where in my real estate sales, we had this thing called a bold 100, where you make 100 contacts in a day. And I already did one before, got sales. I'm pretty experienced on the phone, so I'm not worried about this, right? I made 100 calls between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. 0. Zilch, nada. 100 calls. The next day I made 5 calls and I got 2 clients.
That's awesome.
So I would
Who do
say
we
one
got
thing,
left? Josh
one
and
thing
David,
that
and then
you
we're out
can
of time.
do to take the pressure off a little bit is you don't need to solve their life. It's just one step. Just move them one step forward. Don't overthink this.
Great. Yeah, and just very practically, if my goal is to be constantly in conversation, then I need a priority list. Every day I've prepared from the day before and say, here is the priority list of who I'm calling, and I'm writing out, I'm doing the prep work. So here's the phone number. So I'm not spending half of that time block trying to look up the information, look up their phone number, figure out the situation, like prepare a little bit. So you have your speed dial list and you just start working through it, so that if you only have 10 minutes in between a session or between different tasks, then you're gonna make one of those phone calls because everything's right there in front of you, ready to go.
Man, every time we do this, I just want to sit here and talk for 5 hours, but we've all got work to do. So thank you guys for being on today. Thanks for you guys that are participating or watching this recording later. A lot of good stuff here. Go back and watch it again, take notes, and then pick 1, 2, 3 things that you're going to start implementing right away. And what I hope you guys got from this is, we look at the pro coaches, we look at the people that are performing at a high level and think, man, they've got it easy. They just have so many people to call. And if I only had hundreds of people to call, I wouldn't have these challenges. But 0 for 35, 0 for 100, like that's real. And so yesterday I posted on the Facebook group, coaches expect it to be easy, but let's be real with ourselves. It can be hard. And if you think it's going to be easy, or we think it's easy for that person over there, we're fooling ourselves. It's tough. If it was easy, then it wouldn't be worth anything. It wouldn't be, none of this would exist. If succeeding with your money was easy, then you wouldn't be a coach, because nobody would need a coach. And so that's we want it to be hard. That's how we get a lot out of it, and that's how we grow. So thanks for being here, guys. You guys are world class. We appreciate you. Take care. And hey guys, we got one more. I don't remember the date. I don't have it on me, but I'll send an email out. We got one more prospecting during quarantine, number 3 coming up in, I think, 2 weeks. And we'll see you then. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.